You've arrived at this video because you're fearful that you're going to embarrass yourself, that people are going to laugh at you, that you're going to forget what you're going to say, or that maybe people think what you have to say is irrelevant, or whatever that is, that fear that you have. I'm going to give you 5 things that are going to help you to shift that narrative and to shift whatever limiting belief you have to help you to be a more confident communicator. The first one is to desensitize yourself. And what that really means is that you want to be putting yourself into situations where you are practicing your speaking as often as you can. I know it sounds really simple, but the truth is it is simple. And it's about putting yourself into situations where you are practicing your public speaking in a non-threatening environment. And that could be in an environment where you are speaking to someone that you are friends with. Maybe it's a colleague or a coworker who loves to hear what you have to say. Just putting yourself into that environment and speaking and giving a talk which you've prepared. They can help to give you feedback firstly, but secondly, it's also about desensitizing yourself towards the act of speaking in public. Because if you can do that on a repetitious cycle, as often as you can then build it up. You can then speak in front of people that maybe you're not that comfortable with. And eventually you'll get to a stage where you will get to a podium and there's a whole bunch of people there that you are unfamiliar with and you're confident speaking in front of them. And really it is about putting yourself into the situations as much as possible to try and desensitize your brain towards those environments. The second one is to prepare and to practice. Again, I know it sounds super simple, but the truth is, when you are speaking in front of other people, if you haven't rehearsed and you haven't practiced and you don't know your content, then naturally you're going to feel nervous. And very often, whenever I've felt the most nervous is when I have felt the least prepared for those situations. Because when I have felt prepared and I do know my content inside out and I feel confident about the message that I'm sharing, then of course I'm going to be a lot more confident when I'm delivering that speech. And if I don't know it, I'm not going to be confident. There are 3 ways that you can actually put into practice right away when you are speaking in public. The first one is to know the beginning of your talk about your speech inside out. You want to know that so well because when you are standing up and you are facing the audience, your brain is going to get into a fight or flight situation. And you're going to feel nervous and your heart rate's going to elevate and you're going to feel sweaty. And sometimes your mind might go blank. But if you have rehearsed and you've practiced that beginning bit extremely well, then it'll almost be second nature and you'll deliver it even if you are nervous. The second is to, as much as possible, practice delivering that speech on camera. And what will happen is when you are doing that, you'll be able to give yourself feedback. You'll be able to see, all right, well, where are the nervous tics coming from? Am I using a word unnecessarily? Or is there something that just doesn't sound right in my talk or in my speech? And just the act of recording will help you to do that. So again, you don't have to do it in front of other people. Just do it on camera and listen to it and be able to give yourself feedback. The third one is to, if you can, go and practice in the environment in which you're going to be delivering that talk. If it's in the work context, maybe it's the meeting or the boardroom where you're going to be speaking. Or alternatively, if you are giving a talk in a public, if it's in an auditorium, if you can, go to that situation, go to that room and get familiar with it. Go and practice in that room so that when you are getting into an environment where you are delivering that talk in front of others, you've already been in that place a number of times, so it feels super comfortable and you feel very confident in delivering that talk in that environment. The third one is to create a fear ladder. And basically what a fear ladder is it's about helping you to analyze which environments, which situations do you fear the most. Perhaps what you're really terrified of doing is speaking in front of a large group of people that you are extremely unfamiliar with. You don't know who they are. And that could be a number 5 for you because that is something that you fear the most. And what you fear the least could be maybe speaking in front of, could be in a work environment and you're speaking in front of individuals that you know because they work within your team. In that fear ladder, you've got something that you fear the most versus something that you fear the least. And then there's situations in between that. So potentially, if the 5th one is speaking to an environment or speaking to individuals who you are unfamiliar with, maybe number 4 is speaking to those individuals, but you are familiar with them. And you want to create that fear ladder because what you want to do is start to conquer those fears one by one, start to knock them off. And then you can start kind of going down the list, and eventually you'll build up where you're talking to an audience that you are unfamiliar with, and this is a large audience, and that's the thing that you fear the most. Because when you start to contextualize it in that way and you start to realize that you don't fear public speaking entirely, but there's certain things where you can practice that can help you to overcome that fear within a smaller context, and it's not as fearful as whatever the biggest fear is. Because remember, this is all completely individualized. You can start to knock those things out and eventually build yourself up to an environment which feels really terrifying right now. But again, it's a process, and you'll get to that point where you'll be able to deliver that talk whenever that day comes. The next one is to challenge your negative thoughts. Because when it comes down to public speaking, especially if you're fearful, you constantly have these negative thoughts on repeat. It feels like a broken record, just going around and around in your head. And very often it's linked to some particular event or situation that happened in your past. To give you a perfect example, in my situation, I had delivered a talk. In fact, it wasn't a talk. It was a play that I was taking part in high school. And I'll never forget that the entire high school was there. Even my parents were there. And got up on stage, and I completely blanked out. I forgot my lines in the middle of this dialogue that I was having with someone else. And I walked up and down the stage trying to remember my lines, and eventually, I can't even remember what happened towards the end of it. But what I do remember very distinctly and very vividly is the act of forgetting those lines on stage and what it felt like. It felt really embarrassing to me that happened, and that I did forget those lines. And that negative memory was kind of etched in my brain, and I held on to it for many, many years. And there was these ongoing reminders whenever I got into a situation where I felt embarrassed, or that I felt that no one wanted to hear what I had to say. And it was just like Clinton, you know, it's just a reminder that you're terrible at public speaking, and you're just no good at speaking in front of others, because you've got all this evidence to convince you that you are not great at public speaking. And the truth is, those things happen on repeat. And what you have to do is you have to be able to tune those things out. And yes, of course, the act of delivering talks and speaking in front of others helps to rewrite those negative beliefs. But sometimes what you don't want to do is you don't want to have those things on repeat before you've delivered that talk. And the truth about negative or limiting beliefs is that they can be rewritten. So if you have a limiting belief that says to you that every time you step on stage you embarrass yourself in front of others, you can rewrite that belief, and you can simply say, well, public speaking is a natural extension of who I am, and I love the act of speaking in front of others and sharing my opinion and sharing my point of view. Now, which one is a more empowering belief? The first one or the second one? Now, naturally the second one. And that ultimately is a story that you can rewrite, and a story that you can start telling yourself, because you don't want to be constantly telling yourself these limiting beliefs, because then it's just going to be reinforced in your behavior. So you want to actually sit down and write down what are these limiting beliefs that you have around public speaking, and then write a more empowering belief that is going to serve you, because that story is going to be a record that you do want to play, especially when you're getting onto the stage and you have those things that are playing in your mind. You want it to be an empowering one. Now, the last one is to really keep perspective. When you go out and speak to others, there are bound to be people that don't agree with what you have to say. I mean, when you are speaking to friends or you're speaking to family members and you're sharing a point of view, you're sharing your opinion, not everyone agrees with what you have to say. Not everyone loves what you have to say. Now, why would that be any different when you are speaking in public? So if you are delivering a talk and there's 10 or 20 people in the auditorium or in the presentation, if there are those number of people and 80% of the individuals love what you have to say and actually want to hear what you have to say and they agree with your point of view, but there are 2 people that disagree with it, which one are you going to focus on? Are you going to worry about the 20% of individuals that don't like what you have to say and don't agree with you? Or are you going to focus instead on the ones that do love what you have to say and focus on those individuals instead? And simply being able to keep that perspective and know that when you're going into a situation or an environment where you are delivering a talk, Not everyone is going to love what you have to say, and that is completely fine because that is human nature. Now, it's a well-known fact that public speaking is one of the greatest fears that we have. And in fact, 75% of individuals out there have this fear just ingrained in them. And that's been conditioned into them for whatever reason. Maybe they had a situation where they embarrassed themselves in front of others like I did when I was in high school. Or maybe they grew up in an environment where it was not okay to express your opinion. I've now spoken in front of 10, 50, 100, hundreds of people. And I'll be honest with you, that fear hasn't completely vanished. It's still there, but it's less prevalent as what it was when I began this journey many years ago. So if you can start to implement some of these methods into your journey, I can tell you it can help to transform your public speaking journey. So I'd love to know which one you're going to be implementing right away. Let me know in the comments below. And if you got any value out of this video, share it with a friend or family member. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.